is that it starts record. Oh, it's recording. All right. So two non-amazing philosophers. I am the Viking poet, and we have Sel Nightshade here. And what we're going to discuss today, Monfrere?
Today we're going to discuss the future, which is an ever relevant topic, I think, and one that we don't always get to grips with.
Like Doctor Who?
I don't really watch Doctor Who. I've watched Doctor What. So that
Really?
that was good.
I've watched Doctor When. I think that's quite
good. Doctor Where?
Doctor How? Doctor Show Me. But anyway, yeah, we want to talk about the future and what's really interesting. I've mentioned it quite a few times in videos. Is that I'm obviously a historian. I spent a lot of my life looking into the past and thinking about the past and looking at trends, socioeconomics, and how that's had such a huge impact, and demographic shifts as well. And you have this progress in society. And for me, what I think I can do with varying degrees of success is use that to then kind of make, not I wouldn't say gilt edge predictions, but broad forecasts about the way the future is going to be. So,
I think, Sam, I want to come on from a different angle.
Yeah.
Like, think about it from powered flight in the early 20th century. We went from like a basic biplane to man landing on Jupiter in 60 years, yeah, or the moon or whatever, And like the computer, we went from the Babbage machine, to like those massive, like four massive rooms of computing for 225 KB, to this little phone in my hand, which is thousands of times more powerful than those computers in like 60, 70 years. Like, really, this is a miracle in my hand. And so I think technological progress and how it changes our lives is pretty unpredictable. And because it's so complex, like one thing leads to another thing, and then they have those things all interact with each other in ways that are emergent and can't really be predicted from before. So yeah, I think the future's, it's both scary and exciting, but I think it's quite hard to predict where it's going to go, even though it'd be great to.
It is. I mean, look at the obsolescence, that we've seen in our lifetime. Do you remember those like Walkman and like they had like CDs in them? Yeah. So you had them ones, and then do you remember those mini like discs that they had instead? And like some funky rich kids in the school that you went with, they would have had them as well. Do you remember them before iPods?
I remember, yeah, DVD.
Yeah, they were like mini. They were mini, but like mini DVD, like
yeah,
like and then like man was busting that. Man was busting that into school, like, hey, look at my latest Edge of Capitalism things, like that, and like showy capital, but that became obsolete. And I remember before mobile phones, do you remember what they called? Beepers. What are they called?
Pages.
What? Yeah, they were beepers. Pages. yeah, pages. Do you remember pages were actually a thing? And you would ring up someone and be like, and it'd be like, oh, you smell like cabbage, and then they'd put that through to them, and they'd get a silly message, and that's what I used to do to my friend. Anyway, and then mobile phones came along.
Yeah,
but they weren't anything like these supercomputers we got here, and just like Nokia's and 4 times doing this. But no, I mean, sorry, to go back to my only point is that we've seen technologies within our lifetime come and go. Yeah. And it's like by the time it's produced, it's already obsolete. Yeah. It's called like controlled obsolescence is the thing about capital. So it does make some of these trend shifts hard to predict. Like even with languages, like kind of like Esperanto was thought after World War II it'd be like the world global language, but so often these predictions are wrong. If you think about it, that person that invented that mini DVD Walkman CD Walkman thing. They literally put all their money on the line and like innovative, creative mindset, and didn't get any dividends. So, making loose predictions.
It could have been otherwise. Maybe those CDs maybe those little DVDs, if things had been a bit different, would have lasted longer. It's just like I remember when every new thing comes out, like iPods or even wireless, I'm always like, oh, we don't need that. It's a waste of time. And then years later, I think, I did get into the technology long after it's gone down in price and so on. So I then I end up accepting the convenience. I mean, a lot of it is just now convenience. It's not really meaningful technological advance. It's like really, I think one thing that I think maybe we can both agree on is that technology has to become more sustainable, and the materials it's made from, how it's made, the energy it requires, the power. I mean, that we're not in an age of endless fossil fuels and endless whatever we want anymore, are we? So I think technology is going to get it's going to have to get sleeker, and everything is going to have to get more efficient, and has to last longer and stop being so damn wasteful as the capitalist system now is. It's pumping out shit, we buy it and then dump it on other countries when it's done. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. But one thing I think is about the capitalist system is that it's hella resilient. I think it's very resilient. So I think there'll be immense changes. I can see these greener technologies. Well, I've already seen them being adopted. Like Boris Johnson will be the Saudi Arabia of wind farms in Britain. So we're already weaning ourselves away from fossil fuels, at least in Britain, and developing economies will soon do the same. So I can see that trend shift happening. But and whilst we're talking about they will be more sustainable. You think about those wind farms that are being built in to see they're very made out of like materials which are designed to last a long time. But it won't. I can't see it benefiting the masses apart from staving off global warming or climate change. I can see a lot of people making a lot of money. I can see a few people again at the top of the social hierarchy making a lot of money out of this. I think there'll be some kind of greater class divide and social class. That's something very interesting as well. I think the class divides will be more pronounced in the future. I can't see this system having a great impact on the middle class. I think the middle class is really being crushed. Yeah, and has been crushed. It's been crushed during COVID. You think like someone who's lower middle class, just a small business owner. Let's say they run a cafe, okay, or a greasy spoon, and they've lost their money. They're no longer like have a business. They've lost their capital, and then their children will probably lose their capital, and etc. So there's like these knock-on effects, and property. That's a very interesting dynamic as well.
So let me jump in here because we've covered quite a bit. I'll start with the second. I've got 2 points to make, but I'll start with one that's relevant to what you just said. Like, doesn't that go to show, Sam, that the fact that we're not really is society morally improving? Like, are we making progress? Is the future getting better and better and better? As you just said, the middle class is getting strangled. Wealth inequality is increasing. We can throw in inflation going up. We're getting less bang for our buck. People are working long hours. People aren't unionizing. Most people just believe that capitalism. They don't even realize. Oh, we're in capitalism. They just take it to be reality. There's no. I mean, there's some alternative like, economics and so on and ideas, but like the dominant idea is still capitalism, and that dominates a lot of people's lives. Yeah, I see society and think we're in a big step backwards here. Like people's rights, like trans rights, which were going forward, have been taken back. We still got like nasty far right conspiracy theorists and racists and so on in society. Like progress is like messy, and I don't know. This makes me think of it more of a cycle that kind of goes round and round and round, and goes forward. So obviously it moves on, definitely, but it's a messy process, and I'm not cynical about the future, but I probably should be more cynical than I am because it's looking kind of to make it harder for us.
I mean, I feel very cynical about teachers. There's a lot of things that you said there. As you've discussed a wide arena of different things, but definitely with regard to like employment. I mean, I've been teaching PSHE, and part of that is employability and getting the students that I teach ready for the world of employment. And one of the studies from like Oxford or Cambridge University, 47% of jobs that exist today won't exist in 30 years' time. And I just think like with the automation that's going on. I was speaking to a BT or an OpenReach telecommunications engineer, and he was telling me how many 5G masts they're all being put in the lampposts. Yeah, they've been put in the lampposts. So we're gonna have this amazing 5G network in London. And he said the big reason for that is so it's going to help driverless cars. Well, the most common job that men do all over the world is driving. So with this automation, there's going to be a lot of unemployed men, particularly men who don't access tertiary education, particularly men with low literacy rates in modern society. So you have a society which has become more informational. Like, I don't know if that's the right word, but we have a society which has more information thrown at it than ever before. And yet we're potentially going to have a class of men who can't access that information, and at the same time are going to be unemployed. So if they're going to be unemployed, they're going to have very low self-esteem. I would imagine that that there's going to be this huge gap between the employed and the unemployed.
Yeah.
And that will exacerbate the class differences. It's very, very interesting, And one thing I used to really not value was health and beauty. When I saw students studying health and beauty, I used to think, well, it's not intellectually rigorous, but I think it's one market which will continue. At least there will be jobs within that market. Health and beauty always exist. At least there's some semblance of employer there. So it's the world's going to undergo this radical change. And Trotsky said, "War is the locomotive of history." Well, it seems that COVID is certainly a catalyst for this automation and for plans for automation as well.
Well, yes, I mean, definitely in our lifetime, we've seen like self-service checkouts in supermarkets. I think it is kind of inevitable that automation is going to happen. I think Oscar Wilde, that we just named up in here, Oscar Wilde is writing about in The Soul of Man under Socialism. He talks about it as a golden age. You can be free to do what you want, to be a poet and to be a philosopher and whatever. So I think automation, it kind of depends on the system we're in. If we're in a capitalist system, and obviously the system has to sustain all these unemployed people, and obviously there'll be something like universal basic income. But as you're saying, that's not exactly going to be very generous. The people who have work will get more and more powerful, more and more capital. People who can't work, well, there'll be no jobs for them to do. There will literally be nothing they can do. They'll just be consumers. They will have no power, no ability to improve their situation. I mean, through COVID, I've kind of lived something like that. It's like really hard to get a job, and you're kind of stuck on what was for a long time effectively UBI, the government giving you money because there was no jobs and you had to isolate or whatever. And it's like, wow, it's it takes away a lot of power. Like, workers have a lot of power when they're useful to their employers because they can strike. But if you're all on UBI and you've got no relevance to the system, you're just a consumer. You lose a lot of power in them. So it can be quite under a capitalist system. Automation is just the profits of it and the value of all those little robots. That's not going to go to the people. That's going to go to where the people at the top. The people are going to, as you're saying, people are going to be kind of stuck. We're going to have to build a new culture of like volunteering and community and so on. But
yeah, that's not based around work. Like so, or well, certainly not paid work. I mean, it's just impossible. I remember watching like cartoon, like the Jetsons, and like the only job that the father of the Jetsons had was to push a button. That was it. That was it, because all the computers did everything else, but they didn't have permission to push the button. Only a human could push the button. So that was the only reason he was employed, to beep, to push the button. So not a nuclear metaphor, but that was like hugely insightful. And some of these like sci-fi guys, they've really forecasted the future quite well, because it does seem that, I mean, just look where automation can go. Let's think about it. Yeah. So like people love getting takeaway meals, because who can be bothered to put toast in the toaster, bread in the toast these days.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mate, it's too much hard work.
Frying rice, not gonna happen.
Yeah, allow it. So
allow chopping vegetables, bro.
Exactly. Allow spending any time creating food for yourself. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, so you think that's going to continue, definitely. But rather than having like this Uber driver who soaks up 30% of your profits, like I can just see not driverless cars. I think I've even seen this. It was on like a Tomorrow's World or Gadget Show type program. It's just like this little gadget that runs from a shop, not run, but on wheels, and
a lifebot.
Yeah. Like just goes from the shop,
lifebots,
and drops it off to your front door, and then it's kind of like on this lock system. You have to put in a code, so you'll be able to break into it and steal it
and jack it, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And that
jack those sandwiches, bro.
Exactly. Like
you can't do it. It will electrocute you if it's laser ray.
Give me those vegan KFCs, bro. Anyway, so like, do you know what I mean? Like, but you just that's where
murking up a robot.
That's where we're at. That's where society's at. Like, it's so woke. Like we're so woke because we're vegans, isn't it? We're part of the solution.
Sam, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Jump in? You're talking about great sci-fi artists, people like I don't know, H.G. Wells or whatever. Isaac, what's his name again? Is it Asimov?
Asimov, yeah, Asimov.
And me. Well, not really. But when I was young, when I was really depressed, I was writing a sci-fi, and one of the concepts is, you're gonna love this. Well, it's a dystopia. People live in these huge tower blocks in these rooms, and they can leave their room, but there's no real point to it. And all the work they do is within that room, so they can get. And then when they want something, they press a button, and it comes through this tube. It just goes. If they want food, they just put in these like tubes, and then press like pizza, and the flavor of pizza will just come into them. It's like this dystopian world, and obviously it's an extreme satire. Often predictions are extreme, by the way, and these are they go too far. But like that's kind of, I've kind of foreseen. Hopefully this doesn't happen, but I've foreseen and warned humanity in my unpublished sci-fi story, which I didn't even finish. But I've warned humanity that this kind of compartmentalized life where you just get what you want is no life at all. And like as you're saying, these life bots delivering vegan KFC or whatever, it's like. Yeah, man. And the thing is, Sam, every time there is a convenience, I mean, it doesn't save you any time. It just means they'll work you harder, doesn't it?
Mate, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. This is something that I experienced. Like, so Mans went to Zizzi with his family. Yeah, so I went to Zizzi's, and when I went to Zizzi's, they were like, "Oh, there's now speedy order." I was like, "Right, speedy order, like what is das?" And it's basically what they want you to do is order. So when they don't want the waiter or waitress or waiting person to come to your table and take your order, what they want you to do is use an app on your phone and make your order like that. Yeah. So then, like, you don't even interact with the waitress or waiter anymore.
Oh, fucking hell, yeah.
Like, and I was like, bruv, like, the reason I come out is to speak to not my family, innit? And speak to the waiting person and, crack my dad jokes and make them feel uncomfortable. But they're even taking that human contact away, and I figured it out. It's economic, yeah, because if your waiters and waitresses aren't talking to the customers anymore, yeah, and they're literally just taking the food to them and like taking the plates and then high and buy, what you're doing, those waiting people are working more than they're not, yeah, because they're just literally taking the food, taking the drinks, and then removing them from the tables, and that's all they're doing. So then you won't have to employ so many staff because they're not burdened by taking orders. Yeah, they're like, this is our preferred way of doing things from now on. But that's taking part of the joy of going out for a meal is to strike up a rapport with the waiting person, and to or maybe ask them some questions about what food is this or what food is that. I just think like that business model it's kind of like it's kind of self-defeating. I was like, like people don't go out for meals just so they can ignore the waiting stuff, do they? I mean, or do people hate waiting staff that much, or they're so anxious they can't
It's another layer of moving away from human interaction, as you're saying. Same things happened in train stations, supermarkets as well. I mean, when I go to Asda, when man goes to Asda, I go to Asda, do my Asda, and I go to self-service, boom, I'm out. You know what I mean? I don't even have to talk to it. Sometimes self-service doesn't work. So there's still people there. You might say, excuse me, or if you buy alcohol or whatever, you've got to check you. But like it changes the experience from I'm going to go there and then pay to the cashier or whatever to the till. I mean, let's not like glorify that job. I'm sure it's hard and so on. But is that, better than whatever you're saying, 47%, as that prediction said, of people unemployed? It's like that's disturbing that you wouldn't have a waiter. Because obviously you can tip waiters as well, and they're trying to cut that out. I mean, they're using automation to their advantage. I mean, but the thing, automation could be so damn good. It could liberate us. It could liberate humanity. Think about how efficient robots are. Like you can end world hunger. I mean, we already can, but like you could deploy robots in, I don't know, parts of the world that are developing and are struggling because of climate change induced predominantly by the first world inverted commas nations. We're mainly responsible for climate change. We need to bloody provide some solutions. So some automation can be very efficient and can free people to, do other things. So it's just about how we use it at the end of the day. But the thing is, it sounds like capitalism is using it quite cynically, just to stack up peace and break our spirit, man. I mean, COVID is a great example. It's like it's quite dystopian. Like billionaires got richer during COVID. And those massive corporations,
the poor got poorer, and the poor got poorer, right?
They're going to be suffering the recession and so on. It's like,
there will be a recession. There definitely will be one.
Not cynical.
Long term, there will be one. There's going to be this short term economic growth because things are opening back up, and the economy is growing by 7%. Yeah, but it shrunk by 20% last year. So it's not like and a lot of people are unemployed and. They just won't get those jobs back. But Bertrand Russell, I think, he wrote about automation because people used to really worry about this in factories and how machinery would take people's. And it's been a common theme through the Industrial Revolution. I think you had who are those people that destroyed
Luddites?
They were the G's. Anyway, right. So, but Bertrand Russell made this prediction that, instead of sacking the factory workers, so say if you find a machine and it was 50% more efficient, well, instead of sacking 50% of the workforce, just tell them that they only have to spend 50% as much time at work, and stuff like that. So then, actually, what you're doing is releasing people from their labor. But the problem is that I think it's human conscientiousness as a trait is actually pretty high. Most people don't just want to sit at home alone and watch Netflix and The Walking Dead and zombie films like all the time. Anyway, people actually like to innovate and create and do things that they think has value. And
challenged.
Yeah, and I think the thing is with work is that it does give people tremendous sense of value. Like whenever people say, "Oh, what do you do for a job?" I'm like, "Well, actually, I'm a director of humanities in a secondary school." Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I say, and people kind of accord respect, don't they, with how skilled your job is or how well paid it is, etc. So, yeah, it's it does give people an enormous sense of value, their employer, and so if you take that away from people, and it gives people identity as well, doesn't it? It gives you a sense of identity, and so
I mean, this to me sounds like a sign of Homo laborious. So before you might have had Homo religios, religion will give you a lot of identity or whatever. And I don't want to oversimplify the past too much, but now we're in an age of, I don't know, is it not quite a nihilistic age where people, defining yourself by your job role? I can kind of see that, understand that, but I think maybe part of our move into the future is to find new ways to identify, new ways to spend our time let the machines do the shite work. We can do the human stuff, the art and the music and the gardening and the, person to person stuff. I mean, I wonder how long are we going to hold on to like an old model of, factories, and which wasn't always how humanity spent its time. But, so it's like, is that not archaic? Like the Industrial Revolution, schools with ringing bells and getting you ready to be a sausage, in the great sausage factory of life. It's like, isn't that all completely irrelevant now? Shouldn't we be maturing as a species, trying evolving into the new stage of humanity, where we are more interaction with the machine, where there's more digital realms and so on? Let's get ready for unless of course civilization starts to crumble because of climate change and war, in which case we're going to be going back to something far worse. But hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, what do we do, Sam? Try and keep this work, people's identities attached to their work for all of time? Is that the end of evolution?
It's just a new phase of human development, which I don't think we're ready for it. I don't think humans are. It's a brand new. It's a revolutionary. It's a revolutionary way to see ourselves, and the education system has completely stagnated. Like we haven't, we just haven't adapted. Like when kids used to, oh, what's the point of learning pi r squared and Shakespeare and something like that, and I used to get really annoyed because I think this is classical knowledge. This is what you should be learning. But what's crazy is that when you teach kids about like real life, they just shut off. And when you teach them about something that's completely useless, they're like, yeah, this is interesting. This is real learning, like that. So I think the kids have been conditioned. It's only when they start to get an age where they start thinking about work that I've really enjoyed teaching like employability to the students that I teach, and getting ready for an interview, or how would you procure a mortgage? How would that even work, and stuff like that. And that I think is useful. But I think a big problem with these emergent technologies is that fewer and fewer people be able to access them. I mean, like with IT, to even be able to use IT takes a level of intelligence and adaptability. Like, in where I work, I see some, you get ranges of people. Like, I think I'm quite good at using new technologies, and you get some people and they struggle, and it takes them quite a bit longer. So, and that's within an educated class. Yeah. So even just the user interface of technology requires a level of intelligence. But the people that make these like technologies, they're of another level of intelligence, aren't they? And so with IT becoming more and more complex, the amount of people that can work within those systems becomes fewer and fewer and fewer. They effectively become very powerful people, don't they? They become extremely powerful people.
But it's quite interesting. Another point that I'll just touch on is like how technology is a wonder to it. Like we take it for granted. Whatever epoch we're born into, we just take for granted. I'm sure my young relatives who are growing up with Facebook and phones and so on, this is part of the world. They couldn't even imagine that at some point people didn't have like social media and phones and these mysterious switches. When you press them, it makes the computer come on. We don't really understand it. It's like,
people didn't used to take pictures of their food before they ate it. Anyway.
Of course. And if they did, they'd do it on like a pologram, and you couldn't upload it to someone else. You have to wait until you met them and say, "Look at my food." And before that, back in the good old days, if it comes to Victorian, whatever, you'd have to draw a picture of your food. And before that, like if you go back to like caveman bow and arrow riding a dinosaur or whatever, that's probably not historically accurate. But times, they didn't even have the means to take a selfie.
Hard times, man.
How can you see yourself other than in like water? You couldn't even see it yourself. So like, the impact of this technology on ourselves has changed. Like we've maybe become a bit more, maybe not more vain, but more aware of how we appear to the world, because we're always taking photos of ourselves and that's the norm. And you kind of have to go on these technologies like WhatsApp or Twitter or whatever, or Facebook,
Mm.
everyone's on there. So you kind of, if you don't go on it, you kind of get ostracized, and so you kind of dragged along the stream.
Yeah, late
it's like,
adopters. People become late adopters. Like they're like, oh, like even like older generation people. They're like, I don't want this. Like even my 90-year-old grandmother, like she's got WhatsApp.
What?
Even
Wow,
even
bloody hell, man.
even old Maureen. Like, do you know what I mean? But like the thing is, I tried to get her to use a computer. She couldn't work the mouse.
Oh, bless her.
She couldn't work them. I was like trying to show her the mouse moving around, and like you had to click on things, and like she couldn't move the mouse arrow to the right thing. She wasn't getting it. So I said, all right, let me just move it like to the X, or like so you can minimize and maximize something.
Yeah.
And I moved it for her, and now just press the button. And every time she was going to press the button, she was pressing it so hard that it was missing.
No.
It was missing. I was just like, So they've had to adapt technologies for like older generational people. It's like when you go to a bank, and I haven't been to a bank in years now because I do it online. I remember going to a bank and seeing these like self-service machines. So you wouldn't have to bother a person, and you get all these pensioners in there, and they're like, I don't know how to use it, like that. So you have got this generational trend shift. But going back to what you were saying, we are the last great generation of the pre-internet people. Yeah, we have lived pre-internet, and we're living kind of, I wouldn't say post-internet, we live in internet.
Yeah.
Because there's no post-internet, it's just continuity of internet technologies. So we've lived pre-internet where you used to have to wait a week for TV programs to come out, if you really like them. And like you'd have to go to if you wanted the latest pair of trainers, you'd have to go to like JD Spitz, and and
music. You have to go to HMV.
And
look at actual CDs and
and then that always had a cool vibe though. I always like going to HMV because it always like be cool people into music in there. I'll be like, you listen to music, I listen to music.
Oh my god.
Like, we both listen to music. That makes us cute. It always and the HMV people that was working there would always be like super music. Like
I know,
like
musicy.
And I think, you know your music because you work in a place of music. But anyway, tangent. Like we are that last great generation that's lived pre-internet and in internet. So we know the difference. But this younger generation, they're just internet. That's all they're growing up with. Like my daughter, 11 years old, she's only grown up with the internet. She's only grown up with the internet. Like I was 14 when I got my first mobile phone. It didn't have the internet. And text messages were a mistake as well. They weren't even designed to be of social use case.
What they're designed for?
I don't know. I've forgotten that part of the story. But anyway,
but we like use them. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? Like the way you interact with people, like by text. I'm a different person to when I'm in person. There's stuff I wouldn't say to someone in person that I would say via text. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But then it's a bit like writing a letter, isn't it? I guess you can also
disinhibition.
It's a weird, like subconscious thing as well. Like maybe you're in.
People are a lot ruder to like on the internet, aren't they? Like it's called internet disinhibition theory. So like when someone's like really obnoxious and their opinions really annoy you, and they're sitting like in close proximity, you can't really say how frustrating they are as a human being because like they might punch you in the face. Whereas like on the internet we can be completely disinhibited. But even that's changing because there's a lot more accountability around the internet now, like with like these sock puppet these anonymous accounts, they're being reduced all the time, and there's a lot of pressure on places like Twitter to not allow these anymore because they just troll and say like really horrible things. But yeah, like so culture's completely changed basically, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to change. It's going to continue to change,
and people will react. They'll be reactionary to try and stop it.
And economics has completely changed. Like these companies like Amazon, it just wouldn't be available without the internet. Yeah, it just completely wouldn't be available. But
like, I mean, have you seen those people who are like, no one could have foreseen this. Not even like the best futurists could have foreseen that in 2021 there's a guy on YouTube and he makes videos of him eating food. ASMR video is like eating chicken and then noodles, and it's like got millions of views, and he makes thousands of pounds his livelihood is eating food and putting it on YouTube. Like, who could have, like, that's work. Is that work? Is that like, that's his, oh, he just eats food. I'm not joking. It's quite a he just eats food, Sam. All he does is eat food. Is that like, I mean, I guess people desire to watch it, but like, is that productive? I mean, it's just a man eating lots of food. It's like, but how bizarre is human? How crazy are we? Like, what is it? I think perhaps beside this technological advance, there's still the fact that we're, an evolved species, and we're still have we really changed? I think we need to evolve as well. Like, dare I say it, spiritually, and like, and what I like is that now is one of the reactions I do kind of like is this kind of, going back to nature kind of thing, organic. Obviously, I know it is like commercialized and pounced upon by capitalism, as are all good things, but there's a strong thing to it because nature is cyclical, and there's a great comfort and belonging in the cyclical nature of nature, the seasons, and it's always relevant. Like gardening, plants, trees, birds, these have massive impacts on us. The air quality, the fish in the sea, life is all linked. There's something that's very anti-nihilism about belonging to nature, and that I think, again, go back to the climate change thing, is something we have to, I don't know, like adapt to. That's how we have to evolve. We have to build communities precisely so that we can get off this unsatisfying consumerism. It doesn't make people content. It just makes people miserable. That's what its aim is to do. So it's like we have to spiritually evolve as well. That it's not just technology is amazing when it's used well. When it isn't, it's awful.
The thing is that,
but enlightenment, true enlightenment, how can that be anything but good?
But enlightenment, I don't think it's for the masses. Like, I think it's for the rare. Like, I don't think most people want to think about deep thoughts, or that's why I think philosophy is such a niche subject. Like, how many if you had 100 people in a room, is it like who would like to spend their time studying philosophy? Like,
depends how they're raised, doesn't it?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you do get societies which are more philosophical. I definitely think growing up in Britain and spending time with other cultures, like I do think they're more openly discursive, or they have a cafe culture. Like what do they call it in Turkey? Keyif life. So they have this like cafe culture, and they're more discursive, and they discuss ideas. Like, whilst I don't know, British pub culture doesn't seem to be quite as philosophical, but that's just me. That's just me, like sampling different cultures.
What's that? I don't think you need to necessarily do philosophy to be an enlightened person. I just mean like a maturity to the soul, where it's such that you're no longer like on the treadmill of work, consumption, obey, consume, conform kind of thing. A kind of adapting to the next level of human consciousness and connection. And
I'm a lot more pessimistic about that one. Sorry. Like, I just think with this unemployed class on EBI, they will be the consumers, and that they're going to be given just enough money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just enough money by this system, which will be very inflationary, by the way. So it's going to eat away at the wealth of the wealthy as well. But this UBI system, they're going to be given just enough money to consume the like essential products, but then just a layer of money on top of that to take care of entertainment purposes. So otherwise, who would the super rich be creating things for? There's no point. There's no point innovating, creating if there's no market of affordability. So that'll be that's going to be. I mean, I don't know what percentage of people are kind of long-term unemployed in Britain. Is it 5%?
About that, yeah.
I can see that kind of tripling or quadrupling, certainly over the next 50 years. And like these changes, they take longer. I think Bill Gates, or William Gates III, I think is his name. But I think he said changes in technology, they take longer than you think, but then they have more impact than you think. Yeah, like
often we're paying the price for the generation, for the generation before us. I mean, there's always cons, like like wind turbines are amazing, but look, there's stuff about birds getting hit by them, and then someone worked out if you paint a black line on one of the turbines, it greatly reduces the number of birds who go into it. So it's like there's always forward, backwards. It's never quite. There's no like golden solution, and there's no imperfect prediction. I mean, obviously there might be some good things about. I mean, I don't know, like that new life. I mean, at the moment, like people with disabilities have to jump through loads of hoops sometimes just to get the basic thing they need because we have this welfare system which is quite punitive. Whereas under UBI, it's just there's your money. You know, it's a lot more.
It's going to have to go that way. It's not going to be a joke. Curiously, it's going to look like a left-wing argument, but it really isn't. I've seen people like Elon Musk speaking about UBI. Like the billionaires have already accepted this will be a necessity for the future. So then it's just left to the right and the left of the of the undulating population to debate it in their bourgeois pseudo democracy. So but I kind of see it as inevitable because otherwise, what will we be able to do? And I just think I see it as an inescapable direction towards the future. So we have so that this middle class is going to shrink. There'll be a lot fewer people without property. I mean, you're already seeing that now. You're already seeing that with this property ladder. You've got more people owning a second property, who are kind of bourgeois second class, and there's so many different demographics to this. So, the older generation will have 2 or 3 properties. The younger generation quite unlikely to get on or much less likely to get on the property ladder unless they've got a bourgeois background. Okay, or if not bourgeois, at least new money background. There's like a north-south divide in the UK. You've got like those with degrees and those without degrees. You got a divide there. There's so many divides that will contribute to this class dichotomy in the future. But it's just that unemployed. Let's say there's 20% of unemployed, and a lot of them are young men. They're gonna be quite angry, aren't they?
Well, I mean, so even in our generation, like I remember reading once, like a lot of the reason they get into crime because there's traditional masculine jobs aren't there for them, and they're not adapting themselves to it. So just like all that energy goes into being bored. I mean, having nothing to do. It sounds quite frightening. This dystopian future of like UBI used to keep almost half the population on, as the prediction says, on the mobile. But the future. I mean, have you heard? I'm not sure if you heard this phrase. I think it's quite catchy and possibly disturbingly real. The future is either going to be fascist or socialist. I think there can be that is disturbing, even though it's quite black and white. It's hyperbolic and so on. But I mean, I find we're seeing like a lot of capitalism kind of generating this more and more people who are unsatisfied, and the rise of the alt-right and the rise of conspiracy theorists and people who can't, just alienated from society. And then there isn't like a major socialist alternative as there was in the previous generation, even though it might have been a bad alternative in many ways. It was still putting a different way of being out there. So it's like, I mean, capitalism is, the future could be war. It could be like the end of humanism. It could be brutal if we don't address. That's why I guess that's partly why I'm a socialist. Not just optimism, but like we have to be. Otherwise, we're in deep shit. Like we need to overcome this like system that is clearly not benefiting the mass of people, and all the distractions like culture war, pulling down statues, protecting statues. I mean, gestures of unity and so on. If we don't have a material base and we don't have good public services, then there is no space for the individual to thrive. I think we come on humanity. But also, here's the thing: change is, as you know, as a historian, Sam. Like, there's a revolution, then it goes back to tyranny, then later there's another aftershock and a revolution. I think I'm not disheartened, partly because that's how history has sometimes gone. Like, I think people are simultaneously to following the capitalist system, they have a deep realization that it's fucked up and wrong. and that when change comes, it will come back, boom, and it'll be like, wow, this is so obvious. Why didn't it happen before? I'm optimistic, I have to be.
Okay, I think that we're in a time of social dichotomy. We're in a time of where things are more partisan than society is so polarized, and these culture wars are a very important part of that because if you look at the 1990s, the 1950s, those were times where there was like just an accepted set of shared values in society. There didn't seem to be there's very little difference between the left and right. In America, the Democrats and the Republicans work together, but then politics becomes boring and stale. I mean, look at the politics of Britain. No, in the 1990s, like New Labour, and the Conservatives. Man. Like, how much ideologically was that different between them? Very little, right? And that's
we're all Thatcherites now.
Now, yes, so Blair took us in that direction, but society was very unified around him. Look how popular he was on his first election. Things can only get better if you are into physics. Anyway, so so you've got that dynamic, and then what happens after a period of cultural unity is that you get new culture that needs to emerge, and so Western society is completely taking its eye off the ball. Completely taking its eye off the ball. It's kind of got engrossed in these culture wars, and this is important. France fell behind Britain as a serious global power, in part because it was so busy tearing itself apart. So busy. So an example of this, who is that general?
De Gaulle?
He was not De Gaulle. So this was it was the Fashoda incident. So in the Fashoda incident, Britain and France.
What year is this, by the way?
This is like, I think it's either 1902 or it's 1898.
Okay, we don't know exactly. Just need to know roughly what time it is, mate. Don't need to look it up.
Fashoda incident. So this incident was like basically both the British Empire and the it was 1898. Sorry, so both the British Empire and the French Empire wanted to unify. So the British Empire wanted to unify its African colonies from kind of north to south. They wanted to build this famous telegraph pole, and the French wanted to unite what was known as the Caravan Trail. And basically, the French, like the British, just bullied the French out of the region. And part of the reason was because France was so focused on a debate in its own country, and that debate was on he was a Jewish French officer, and I can't remember his name. It's going to really annoy me now. He was a Jewish Dreyfus. There we go, the Dreyfus affair.
Oh yeah, Dreyfus affair. Okay,
yeah. So you can see, like, when a society is conflicted and can't work out its values, and they're not, and there's like a lack of acceptance and a complete, I have to say, there's some very bigoted people on both sides. Like they're kind of like, if you are X wing and you believe in X, unfriend me now, purge me from your life because I represent the very antithesis of you. Do you know what I mean? Like that. So when society is divided like that, it's actually quite a destructive thing, because then that society, like, and with the lack of unity there, they can't really progress any further if you can't agree like what reality is.
And civil war is the ultimate end. In America there's violence between political sides, but the future is not going to be one where the West is necessarily hegemonic. As the whole of our lives, we've been like the powerful, quote unquote, first world, technologically advanced military. That is probably part of that is going. I think, especially with climate change, it might hit other parts of the world first, but it will affect us too. It's like we need to. We just need to be humanists now. We need to care about other human beings more and like end this war between nations, this contest between nations that is like, which is basically, I mean, that's where most of the evil comes down to, just nations competing and exploiting each other. Like, I know people often talk about one world government as an evil. I mean, maybe of course one all-powerful government, it probably would be corrupt and mess things up, but some kind of unity, like in Space Trek, whatever, you know, Space Starman Trek, Life, Spaceship, Space, blah blah blah, Federation, Captain Picarda, yeah, Picarda, Kirk, you know, humanity going to space, bro. You got
Janeway,
Captain Janeway, yeah. You got a different the Voyager crew. Like, what a diverse crew. What a vision of humanity. Like, where we finally achieve humanism. Because at the moment, Sam, when you're talking about these empires, yeah, British Empire and the French Empire, I mean, maybe that's just that's just a thing of the past as well. And we need to move beyond nations and cultures and learn other people's cultures and learn to respect them.
Well,
that doesn't come out
speaking Chinese. I think.
Oh, not for another 50 years.
China's going to. No, I think China's going to be. I mean, the thing about Asian culture, they're much more inward looking. That's a tradition of an Asian kind of, maybe it's Confucianism and like people looking into themselves a lot more, whilst, you know, like you look at Judeo-Christian synthesis, like you've got a religion that wants to exploit itself, and then Greek kind of dialectics, so you want to argue your point. So, you know, maybe that made Western culture a lot more outward looking, but I definitely think that China's going to have that's a bit of a fail-safe prediction forecast, isn't it? China's going to have a much greater weight in global affairs. I mean, I think what you're saying about humanism kind of is the dream. It's very hard. Some people by very nature very tribalistic. You know, there has to be an in-group, there has to be an out-group. You know, and like some people might say, "Oh, well, I'm not tribalistic," but then a good friend, the philosopher poet Sean Ash, always talks about the dichotomy of right and left and how tribalism's a problem in politics. And boo.
But also organization's important in politics as well. So you have to get into a group, because individuals on their own with no direction and just incoherent and can't really achieve anything. But yeah.
Don't you think the Labour movement is far more organized? And, you know, if you look at when in the last election, I did some canvassing for the Labour, for good old Corbs. Anyway, so like, and you know, like the Labour door knockers, even in conservative areas, are hugely outnumbered. The Conservatives like about 5 people giving out leaflets, and yet, you know, like there's like, I think left-wing people are much more likely to take action and be organised than, you know, we set up food banks and stuff like that. But the Conservatives they're not very, like, they just don't have that same. They don't have as much membership. People don't seem to be passionate about being conservative, and yet they seem to just be like the mainstream of like Middle England, don't they? Like, yeah, I'm conservative. You know, I don't like all this new stuff about gender and stuff like that. I'm voting conservative. You know, like I want to conserve my culture.
Fear of the future, isn't it? A desire for eternity, that is, or desire for an age that never was. Like, especially like, yeah, exactly. That he's, you know, these kind of borderline, if not actual fascists. They share that with conservatives, I suppose. That kind of back in the good old day, but really, no, it's just nostalgia, mate. You know, like, I mean, even some of that Thundercats. When you watch that again, it's like, this is so shit. What the old computer game? Oh, it's so amazing when I was 10. You're gonna play it again, it's absolute crap, and you paid £5 on it. Like, what have I done? That's basically what conservatives are doing with society. You know, like, back in the 50s, like, I mean, fucking hell, you know, racism and sexism and blah blah blah. It's like, that's like we need to. I mean, I hear what you're saying about humanism and tribalism. Like, obviously, you can still have your. I mean, culture is very important, and of course, it doesn't mean abandoning your culture, because your language is your culture pretty much as well. There's always going to be different cultures. People aren't just going to magically boom take up Esperanto. It didn't work because it had no culture behind it. Really, it's just like a purely maybe a scientific language, which doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But we need to learn to not be tribalistic. not to other people so much. And
it's very hard though, isn't it? I think that's one of the hardest
it's hard. We've got the
things to
internet.
do.
We've got the internet. We've got instant communication.
Mm.
We've sped up the time it takes to get across the world. I mean, what if one isn't optimistic, then what can one be?
I don't know, an investor in Bitcoin. Anyway, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the thing is that those people who are getting ready for climate apocalypse, like they're gonna be in a world where meaning collapses. Like, imagine being this rich billionaire on your little island. What are you gonna pay your gods when your guards realize, hang on a second, money isn't. We can just go and imprison this guy or take him out and then steal his thing. It's like there is no retreating from the world. There's nowhere to retreat to. We have to go into it and
unless you leave the world, unless like this is another one of my big, mate. This is another one of my big and this is I don't think this is 50 years. I think this is like 100, 150 years down the line.
Yeah.
But we should have talked about this a bit more. SpaceX
we got time.
exploration.
Yeah.
So I think basically I had this little idea, and how accurate or real it is that basically you'd have a three-pronged society. Okay. So the highest class are going to live on Mars, and they'd set up this like little moon base, and not moon base, sorry, this little Mars base, and it'd be this perfect ecosystem, and only like the richest billionaires and their families would live there. Yeah, and they'd have a set population, and like every human need would be taken care of, like that. But it'd be hella boring, I think. But at least there'd be like good survival and clean air. And then the moon would be a base on that, because if you think, obviously, the moon, like when it's orbiting the Earth, there'll be a closer point of travel from the moon to Mars. So the moon would be a base there, and that'd be like the second class, and that would be like where, I don't know, like a lot of intelligent people do stuff that maintains Mars. I don't know, or something like that. Just like that'd be like the second class of people, and the third class of people would just be on Earth, and it'd be boiling and hot, and like there would be people that worked for the billionaires and in this moon and the moon base company and stuff like that, and they would have the best of the life on Earth, but it'd be sweltering really hot. The polar caps have melted, and like the global population has reduced, like because they can't produce enough food. So yeah, not great.
I mean, long term, Sally, even going longer term than that, like I'm at the philosophy takeaway back at the stall. The great Big David used to say.
Big
David used to say, if you could download your consciousness into a machine, would you do it? That's a great like futuristic thing. But seriously, like, sure, maybe the future of humanity is digitization, to download our consciousness into computers, or in which case you could travel between one node to another, like you can go to Jupiter in 5 seconds or whatever. But that, to me, I mean, one advantage of being a natural being is you live and you die. There's only so much the human body can take. Imagine if we were all digitized consciousnesses in some system programmed by someone, we could potentially
get ice cream,
but we could potentially be immortal in a total dystopia, in a prison. We could suffer for all of time. It's like quite frightening. Or creating AI, creating thousands of little AIs in a digital program. Like, the moral questions about that, we have to start asking, I think, as philosophers, like, does an AI in a computer program have a right to life? If you press delete, have you just killed someone effectively? It's like, as technology advances and the possibility of digital sentience, which may or may not be possible, I don't know, but like, if it is, the capacity to create suffering or joy is like immense, untold. Imagine playing a computer game where every enemy you kill is an actual AI that dies. That could be possible. That's scary, man.
That is possible. Like, imagine, this is like a totally original idea. Imagine, like, if that AI then starts to rebel against us, right?
Yeah.
And then like a really hench off guy comes and he's naked and he's like, "Give me your clothes and your motorcycle," in an Austrian accent. Hear me out in an Austrian accent, even though that's not suited towards Hollywood, but it just somehow works. Just like that. And we made that into a film. we and like that thing is like really bad, but it's also good. It's a good guy and a bad guy, and we called it the Killernator. So,
well, that's quite a good film in terms of
with regard to that digital consciousness thing. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to do it anyway. So imagine with that digital. Have you ever seen that Captain Kirk and like every time he beams up, he's actually being killed, and like a new Kirk has been created. It's like a clone. Have you not seen that theory?
No.
Like so, basically, what they're doing, like they're taking all of your cells and like basically your consciousness, everything. And every time you beam up, like the one that's getting beamed up is killed, and there's a new one that's being created. Except that you'd never know. You'd never know that, like, you can't remember dying, but essentially, it's not the same Kirk. It's not the same Picard. Oh,
that is pretty messed up, isn't it?
I know. So it's just like that kind of. But going back to your digital code, imagine if someone had a really annoying personality and you can just take that out. Like, oh, very disagreeable. Yeah, just take that 0101 and put a 1010. You know, like in there. Yeah, I think that's very, very dystopian. I think our great reset friends would be very, very
oh god, that would be
well, the genuine ones might be very, you know, the World Economic Forum. they might be.
Let's not muddy the water with conspiracy theory.
What? The World Economic Forum isn't a conspiracy theory.
But what it's capable of and what it will do is very much, that water is very much muddied by conspiracy theorists and alarmists and I've already covered conspiracy, but like, so I was interested we haven't talked about transhumanism and.
Oh, that's a really interesting. I got a friend that on Facebook. He's massively into that transhuman stuff, and he hasn't even got any keys. He's got like this little data chip, and he's the conspiracy theorist. I hate this one, but he's got a little data chip in his hand, and it's like he opens his bleep, bleep, bleep. Zoltan Istan. That's it. He ran for president as a libertarian.
What?
He's actually friends with this other guy that died recently in Spain. Did you see that guy that died in the Spanish jail? He was like some crypto guru and what was his name? Crypto dies in Spanish jail, and like it was like all murky and stuff like that. I can't remember what we're going on. I've gone into this huge.
We're talking about transhumanism, and
transhumanism. So yeah, that's it. John McAfee. Have you heard of John McAfee?
No.
Really interesting guy, but these people are really into. Zoltan Istan, I've got him on Facebook. He's really into this transhumanism, and like really, what it is, they want to conquer death. They don't want to die. They want to like live.
That's disturbing, man.
Forever.
Imagine if all the Romans were still alive now, like Julius Caesar or whatever, or not Julius Caesar, but the guys who stabbed him. Yeah. Can you imagine like every old generation never dying, never producing new people and new ideas? It's like death is terrifying, of course. I understand the desire to escape it, maybe the longevity, but it also is what pushes social change, doesn't it? Like big time.
Well, I think Shakespeare said, you know, in Romeo and Juliet, I think it was Capulet that said, "Alas, we were born to die." And podcasts also must come to an end. You know, we almost spoke for an hour, I think.
Yeah.
so I think
part one. Maybe we can do part two. We can cover more digital. You can cover digital currencies. Yeah. Transhumanism, space exploration. We didn't touch on. We just laid the foundations today. But yeah, cool, man.
I mean, it's such a wide subject. Maybe we should get Ash man.
I mean, I've got a friend who kind of wants to be on as well.
Yeah, have you? Is that who I think it is?
Mr. Foxley.
Oh, Mr. Foxley. I was speaking to the philosophical Prometheus, Elise, and she was saying she wanted to do it, but she has to do it like ridiculously late at night because of childcare. But anyway,
okay,
right.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Let me stop recording.
And we'll see you soon for another edition of Philosophy Takeaway, The Future.